The brass gears of the antique music box clicked softly under Luke's careful touch. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the workshop's dusty windows, catching on his mother's ring as he manipulated the delicate mechanism. The strange symbols etched into the metal seemed to shift in the light, as mysterious now as they'd been 20 years ago. "Come on, you stubborn thing," he muttered, adjusting his magnifying glass. The music box's cylinder had seized up decades ago, its melody trapped inside like a forgotten memory. Luke had promised its owner, a teary-eyed elderly woman, that he could make it sing again. The ring clinked against the brass as he worked, a sound that always brought his mother's voice rushing back. "Never take it off, no matter what. Promise me, Luke." He'd made that promise at 8 years old, watching her fade away in a hospital bed. 15 years of restoration work later, he'd never broken it. A sharp spring pinged across the workbench, snapping him back to the present. Damn it! Luke pushed back from the bench, running a hand through his disheveled brown hair. The music box sat accusingly silent. The workshop phone rang, its ancient bell cutting through his frustration. Luke reached for it, knocking over a cup of cold coffee in the process. "Harrison Restorations," he answered, mopping up the spill with his sleeve. "Mr. Harrison?" A woman's voice, cultured and precise. "I understand you're in possession of something rather unique." Luke wedged the phone against his shoulder, still cleaning. "Ma'am, if this is about the Tiffany lamp I told the auction house. I'm referring to the ring you wear, the one with the Alaris markings." His hand froze mid-wipe. The ring suddenly felt heavy on his finger. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said carefully. "This is a family heirloom." "Indeed it is, Mr. Harrison, though perhaps not the family you imagine." Her tone shifted, gaining an edge. "I suggest you remove it immediately, for your own safety." "Look, I don't know who you are, but—" "They're coming," she cut him off. "Tonight. When the meteors fall, if you value your life, take it off. Leave it somewhere public. Walk away." The line went dead. Luke stared at the phone, then at the ring. The symbols seemed to writhe under his gaze, though he knew that was impossible. Outside, the late afternoon sun was taking on an unusual bluish tint, the meteor shower. He'd forgotten about it. The astronomy blogs had been buzzing for weeks. First, visible passes expected around sunset. His fingers moved to the ring unconsciously, trying to twist it off for the first time in 2 decades. It didn't budge. "Perfect," he muttered. "Just perfect." The workshop lights flickered, then died. In the sudden dimness, Luke could have sworn the symbols on the ring were glowing with a faint, ethereal blue light. A low hum began to build, vibrating through the floorboards. The music box's cylinder suddenly spun to life, releasing a discordant melody into the darkening room. Luke backed away from the workbench, heart pounding. The ring was definitely glowing now, pulsing in time with the growing vibration. The air felt electric, charged with impossible potential. Through the workshop windows, the sky had turned an unnatural shade of purple, and something massive was blocking out the stars. "Oh God," Luke whispered. The ring flared brilliant blue, and the world dissolved into light and sound. When Luke's vision cleared, he found himself sprawled on the workshop floor. His head throbbed, and the ring on his finger burned cold as ice. The humming had grown to a deafening roar. He staggered to his feet, gripping the workbench for support. Through the windows, 3 enormous shapes hung in the twilight sky. Definitely not stars, definitely not aircraft. Their surfaces rippled like liquid metal, casting strange shadows across the Massachusetts countryside. "This isn't happening," Luke muttered. "This is not." A beam of crimson light speared down from the largest ship, flooding the workshop with blood-red illumination. A voice boomed, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Surrender the Alaris artifact. Resistance will result in immediate termination." Before Luke could process this, another beam, this one sickly green, cut through the red. A second voice, whispering and multi-layered. The ring calls to us, child of Earth. Release it to its true purpose. Embrace the darkness. A third beam, brilliant white, joined the others. The artifact must be destroyed. Step outside, bearer. Your death will be quick. Luke backed away from the windows, his heart hammering against his ribs. The ring pulsed faster now, its light almost blinding. The competing beams had turned his workshop into a disco of alien light. No way, he breathed. No way in hell. I wouldn't go outside if I were you. Luke spun around. A woman stood in the shadows by his office door, tall, athletic, impossibly graceful. Her skin was a deep, rich blue that seemed to absorb the chaos of lights around them. Silver hair cascaded past her shoulders, framing features that belonged on a Renaissance painting. Her eyes glowed with a subtle golden light. She was also pointing something that looked distinctly weapon-like at his chest. "Who?" Luke started. "Avelia," she cut him off, those golden eyes scanning the workshop. "And we have approximately 45 seconds before they lose patience and vaporize this building. Less if the Whisperers decide to be creative." She tilted her head, studying him. "You've really never taken it off?" "The ring? No, Look, what the hell is going on?" A smile flickered across her face. "Short version? That's not just jewelry you're wearing. It's the most dangerous artifact in the known galaxy, and everyone up there wants it, some for worse reasons than others." She gestured with the weapon. "Now, would you prefer to keep standing here discussing it, or would you like to survive the next minute?" As if in answer, the building shook. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. "Final warning," the first voice boomed. "Surrender or—" Avelia fired her weapon at the ceiling. A sphere of swirling energy expanded outward, enveloping them in a bubble of shifting colors. The alien voices became muffled, distant. "That won't hold them long," she said. "Decision time, Luke Harrison. Trust the mysterious armed woman or take your chances with the death rays. Choose quickly." Luke looked at the ring, still pulsing with that impossible blue light. His mother's voice echoed again. Never take it off, no matter what. Another explosion rocked the workshop. Through the windows, he could see more ships appearing, dropping out of the darkening sky like metallic raindrops. "Well?" Avelia raised an eyebrow, managing to look both deadly serious and faintly amused. "What's it going to be?" "I'll take the mysterious armed woman," Luke said, just as the workshop's roof began to tear away. Avelia's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Her skin felt like warm silk. "Smart choice. Hold on tight." She pulled something from her belt, a small silver disc, and threw it at the floor. Reality seemed to twist, the workshop's dimensions folding in on themselves. Luke's stomach lurched as the floor disappeared beneath his feet. They fell through swirling darkness. His grip on Avelia's hand tightened, and he could have sworn she squeezed back. Then they were rolling across cold metal, coming to rest in what looked like the cargo hold of a small ship. "Welcome aboard the Star Weaver," Avelia said, springing to her feet with inhuman grace. She extended a hand to help him up. "Sorry about the rough transit. Pocket portals aren't exactly luxury travel." Luke took her hand, trying to ignore how the room was spinning. "You have a spaceship. Of course you have a spaceship." "Among other things." She smiled, revealing perfect white teeth that contrasted beautifully with her blue skin. "You might want to brace yourself." "For what?" The ship lurched violently, sending him stumbling into her. She caught him easily, her strength surprising given her slim frame. Through a viewport, Luke saw his workshop explode in a cascade of multicolored energy. "My shop. Better it than you," Avelia said, steadying him before moving to what was clearly a control console. Her fingers danced across glowing symbols similar to those on his ring. Though I doubt that will slow them down much. We need to move. The ship hummed to life around them, internal lights pulsing with a soft purple glow. Through the viewport, Luke watched his world fall away as they ascended through the atmosphere. The alien ships pursued, their weapons painting the sky with deadly light. "They're not going to let us go, are they?" he asked, clutching a support beam as Avelia executed a series of impossible maneuvers. "No," she said, her expression grim. "They've been searching for that ring for centuries, now that they've found it." She glanced at him, those golden eyes unreadable. "Let's just say they're highly motivated." A blast rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across the console. "Damn it," Avelia muttered. "Shield generators are failing. We need to jump." "Jump? Jump where?" She pulled up a holographic display filled with swirling star maps. "Somewhere they won't follow, at least not immediately." Her lips curved in a slight smirk. "How do you feel about breaking a few laws of physics?" Before Luke could respond, the largest of the pursuing ships appeared directly ahead of them, its weapons charging. "Surrender the artifact," the voice boomed through the ship's comm system. "This is your final warning." Avelia's hands flew across the controls. "Hold on to something." "Wait," Luke said, realizing something. "My cat. I had a cat in the workshop, already taken care of." She nodded toward a corner where, impossibly, his orange tabby sat grooming itself in a cushioned pod. "I'm not completely heartless." The ship shuddered as enemy weapons fire intensified. The ring on Luke's finger pulsed faster, its light synchronizing with the ship's systems. "That's not normal," Avelia said, frowning at the display. "Nothing about this is normal," Luke shot back. "What's happening? Why do they want this ring? Why did my mother—" "All excellent questions," Avelia cut him off, "which I'll be happy to answer once we're not about to be atomized. Now please, hold on." She pulled back on what looked like a crystalline lever. The stars outside stretched into lines of light, and reality itself seemed to tear open before them. Luke's last glimpse of Earth was obscured by the massive alien ships converging on their position. Then they were falling through a tunnel of swirling energy, leaving his world, and everything he'd ever known, far behind. The jump lasted both an eternity and no time at all. When reality reasserted itself, Earth and its pursuers were gone, replaced by an unfamiliar star field and a massive ringed planet looming in the viewport. Luke slumped against the wall, legs shaking. The ring had stopped pulsing but still glowed with a faint inner light. His cat, apparently unfazed by interdimensional travel, continued grooming itself. "Where are we?" he managed to ask. "Edge of the Carina Nebula," Avelia replied, checking her instruments. "About 7,000 light-years from Earth. We should be safe here for a few hours at least." 7,000. Luke's knees gave out and he sat heavily on the deck. "This can't be happening." Avelia turned from the console, studying him with those unsettling golden eyes. "I know this is a lot to process, but we don't have much time before they track us down." "Then maybe you could start explaining." He held up his hand, the ring catching the light of distant stars. "What is this thing? Why did my mother have it? Why are aliens trying to kill us over it?" She sighed, sliding into a seat across from him. "The simple version? That ring is the last surviving artifact of my people, the Alaris. We were, well, some called us gods, others called us demons. The truth, as usual, lies somewhere in between. Your people? But you're the last one?" Her smile held no humor. "Yes, thanks to artifacts like that ring. They were meant to be tools of creation, but they became weapons. The power to reshape reality through pure emotion. It proved too tempting. We destroyed ourselves fighting over them. Luke stared at the ring. And my mother? Was its guardian. Avelia's expression softened. One of many humans we trusted over the centuries to keep the ring safe, hidden from those who would abuse their power. She wasn't supposed to pass it on to you, but... She shrugged. Maternal love is a powerful thing. A warning light flashed on the console. Avelia cursed in a language that made Luke's ears hurt. "They're already tracking us," she said, jumping up. "We need to move." "Wait." Luke grabbed her arm. Her skin was warm under his fingers, almost electric. "Just tell me one thing. What does this ring actually do?" She met his gaze. "It amplifies and manifests the emotions of its wearer. Love becomes creation. Fear becomes destruction. Anger becomes..." She gestured at the stars. "Well, you saw what they're willing to do to get it. And you? What do you want with it?" For a moment, something vulnerable flickered in those golden eyes. Then her walls slammed back up. "To destroy it," she said, "before it destroys everything else." She pulled away, moving back to the controls. "Now, strap in. Our next jump is going to be considerably less pleasant." As if on cue, multiple ships began appearing at the edge of their sensor range. The ring pulsed once, responding to Luke's spike of fear. "They're going to keep coming, aren't they?" he asked. "Yes." Avelia's hands flew across the controls, plotting their escape. "Still want to tag along?" Luke thought of his quiet life, his workshop, everything he'd lost in the past hour. Then he looked at the ring, his mother's last gift, apparently capable of reshaping reality itself. "Do I have a choice?" Avelia's smile was both dangerous and dazzling. "There's always a choice, Luke Harrison. The real question is, what are you going to do with yours?" Before he could answer, the ships opened fire and they were falling through space once again, towards whatever destiny the ring had in store for them. The space station Nexus 7 hung like a tarnished coin against the violet gas clouds of the Horsehead Nebula. Luke pressed his forehead against the Starweaver's viewport, trying to process how his life had changed in the past 72 hours. 3 days ago, he'd been fixing antiques in Massachusetts. Now he was 7,000 light-years from home, watching alien ships dock at a smuggler's haven. "Stop brooding," Avelia called from the pilot's seat. "It makes the ring pulse, and we're trying to stay inconspicuous." Luke glanced down at his hand. Sure enough, the ancient artifact was emitting a faint blue glow. "Sorry. Still getting used to this whole my emotions can alter reality thing. You're doing better than most." She guided their ship toward a docking port near the station's shadowy underside. "Most bearers go mad with power within hours. Start trying to reshape worlds, create armies, that sort of thing." "Is that why you've been watching me so closely? Waiting for me to snap?" Avelia's golden eyes flickered to him, then back to the controls. "Among other reasons." Before Luke could parse that response, the ship shuddered as docking clamps engaged. Avelia stood, the movement fluid as liquid mercury. She'd traded her tactical gear for what passed as casual wear in this sector, form-fitting dark fabric that seemed to absorb light, highlighting her blue skin and athletic frame. "We need supplies," she said, checking her weapons. "And information. The Blue Moon Corporation's been too quiet. That's never good." "You really think they followed us through that last jump?" "They're persistent." Her lips curved slightly. "And they're not the only ones. The Whisperers have agents everywhere, and the Lightkeepers." She shrugged. "Well, let's just say they take their mission very seriously." Luke remembered the white beam that had promised him a quick death. "Yeah, got that impression." A memory surfaced. He'd been 8, wanting desperately to win a school race. The ring had glowed then too, though he hadn't noticed. He'd won by an impossible margin, breaking records that still stood. His mother had looked terrified. "Hey!" Avelia's voice snapped him back. "Stay focused. The ring responds to memories too." "Right." Luke took a breath, centering himself. "So what's the plan?" "We meet my contact, get what we need, and leave before anyone realizes what's sitting on your finger." She tossed him a hooded cloak. "Try to look mysterious and dangerous." Luke fumbled with the clasp. "I restore music boxes for a living." "Then try not to look like you restore music boxes for a living." She stepped close, adjusting the cloak's fall across his shoulders. Her fingers brushed his neck, sending an electric tingle down his spine. The ring pulsed once, brightly. Avelia jerked back. "That's interesting." "What is?" "The ring. It's never responded to." She shook her head. "Never mind. Let's move." The station's corridors were a maze of shadows and strange smells. Beings of all descriptions moved through the artificial twilight, some humanoid, others decidedly not. Luke stayed close to Avelia, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Your contact," he whispered. "Trustworthy? In this sector, no one's trustworthy." She guided them through a particularly crowded intersection. "But credits buy silence, and I've got plenty of those." "How? I mean, you've been hunting this ring for centuries, right?" Her laugh was surprisingly musical. "Let's just say compound interest works in your favor when you're practically immortal." They turned down a narrower corridor, the lighting growing dimmer. Luke's ring hand tingled with warning. "Ave," he started. "I know." Her weapon appeared in her hand. "We're being followed." They ducked into a side passage just as energy bolts sizzled past their previous position. Luke's ring flared in response, and suddenly a translucent blue shield materialized around them. "That's new," Avelia muttered, eyes widening. "The ring's never done that before." "It's protecting us?" Luke stared at the shield as more shots dissipated harmlessly against it. "No," she corrected, "it's protecting you. And by extension, me." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Lucky me." Their pursuers emerged from the shadows, humanoid figures in sleek black armor, their helmets bearing the crescent moon insignia of the corporation. "The ring, Mr. Harrison," one called out, voice digitally distorted. "Our employers are prepared to make you extremely wealthy." "Not interested," Luke replied, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "Then we'll take it from your corpse." The soldiers raised their weapons, advanced pulse rifles that hummed with deadly energy. But before they could fire, Avelia moved. She flowed through the shield like it wasn't there, her own weapon dancing in her hands. 3 precise shots, 3 soldiers down. The 4th managed to fire, but Avelia was already moving, closing the distance. She disarmed him with terrible grace, then slammed him against the wall. "Who sent you?" she demanded. "You know who," the soldier gasped. "The director wants what's rightfully his." "The rings were never his." Avelia's voice went cold. "And neither were we." She knocked him unconscious with a precise strike, then turned back to Luke. The shield was still glowing around him, responding to his elevated heartbeat. "You okay?" she asked, softer now. "Yeah, just—" He swallowed hard. "That was incredible. You were incredible." The ring pulsed brightly at his words. Avelia's eyes widened slightly, and was that a darker blue tinting her cheeks? "We should go," she said quickly. "More will come." They ran through the station's underbelly, the ring's shield protecting them from subsequent attacks. Luke noticed how it seemed to stretch and flex to accommodate both of them, keeping Avelia as safe as himself. "Your contact," he panted as they ran. "Still meeting them?" "Change of plans. We need to—" She stopped abruptly, pulling him into an alcove. "Don't move." A group of robed figures glided past their hiding spot, chanting in whispered voices that seemed to scrape against Luke's consciousness. The ring grew cold on his finger. Whisperers, Avelia breathed, her body pressed close to his in the narrow space. They can sense the ring's power. Luke tried to focus on the danger and not on how perfectly she fit against him, or the faint, floral scent of her hair. The ring had other ideas, surrounding them both in a soft blue glow. "Luke," she warned. "Sorry, I can't help it." He met her golden eyes. "It's like it knows—" "Knows what?" Before he could answer, a new alarm blared through the station. Emergency shutters began slamming down along the corridors. "Station's going into lockdown," Avelia said. "We need to get back to the ship." They emerged from hiding to find their path blocked by more corporation soldiers. Behind them, the Whisperers were returning, and from above, white-robed figures were descending on anti-gravity platforms. The Lightkeepers had arrived. "Well," Avelia said, drawing her weapon, "this should be interesting." The three factions converged simultaneously. Energy weapons discharged, mystical chants filled the air, and the Lightkeepers' purifying beams cut through the chaos. But the ring's shield held, expanding to create a bubble of calm in the storm. Luke felt something stirring inside him, a power he'd never known he possessed. The ring wasn't just protecting them now, it was responding to his desperate desire to keep Avelia safe. "Duck!" he shouted, and thrust his hand forward. Pure energy erupted from the ring, not destructive but transformative. Where it touched their attackers, it seemed to shift reality itself. Corporation soldiers found themselves transported to different sections of the station. Whisperers' robes turned to harmless butterflies. Lightkeepers' platforms dissolved into clouds of glowing particles. "That's—" Avelia stared at him. "How did you—" "I just wanted them gone," Luke gasped, surprised by his own actions. "But not hurt. I didn't want anyone hurt." Her expression softened with something like wonder. "In all my centuries watching the rings, I've never seen one used like that. To protect without destroying." More attackers were coming. The ring pulsed with warning. "We need to move," Avelia said, taking his hand. The contact sent a surge through the ring that made the nearby lights flicker. "The ship's this way." They ran through the chaos of the station, the ring's power clearing their path. But with each use, Luke felt the artifact's influence growing stronger. It showed him possibilities, worlds he could create, realities he could shape. All it would take was a thought, a desire. "Stay with me." Avelia's voice cut through the tempting whispers. "The ring's testing you. Don't let it in." "Is this what happened to the others?" Luke asked through gritted teeth. "The ones who went mad?" "They embraced the power." She squeezed his hand. "They forgot who they were." A memory surfaced. He was 12, watching his mother in the hospital. The ring had glowed then too, offering to heal her. But she'd made him promise not to use it, even to save her life. He hadn't understood then. He was beginning to now. They reached the docking bay to find the Starweaver surrounded by Lightkeepers. "Surrender the ring," their leader called out. "End this cycle of destruction." "There's another way," Luke responded, stepping forward. The ring's light spread around him like an aurora. "It doesn't have to be destruction." "Luke," Avelia warned, "we don't have time for negotiations." But he looked at her, really looked at her, and the ring blazed with sudden clarity. "You've been wrong about it, Ave, all this time. It's not just a weapon, it's whatever we choose it to be." The ring's glow intensified, responding to this revelation. And in that moment, surrounded by enemies, Luke Harrison finally understood why his mother had chosen him as its guardian. He'd never wanted power. He'd only wanted to fix broken things, to make them beautiful again. Just like he wanted to heal the pain he saw hidden behind Avelia's golden eyes. The ring exploded with light. When the light faded, they were back on the Starweaver, racing through hyperspace. The station and their pursuers had vanished, not through destruction but through Luke's desire for safe passage. That was... Avelia checked their coordinates. Impossible. You moved an entire ship through space without a jump drive. The ring did it, Luke said, slumping in his seat. He felt drained but strangely peaceful. It just needed the right intention. The right intention? She turned to face him. Luke, you rewrote local physics. No one's ever... She paused, studying him with those penetrating golden eyes. Why didn't you ever use it before? All those years growing up? He thought about it. There was this one time when I was 9. I wanted a bike for my birthday, but Mom couldn't afford it. The ring started glowing, and suddenly I knew I could just make one appear. But it felt wrong, like cheating at life. So what did you do? Got a paper route, saved up for 6 months. He smiled at the memory. The bike wasn't as nice as the one I could have wished for, but it meant something because I earned it. Avelia was quiet for a long moment. You really are different, she finally said. All these centuries we thought the rings had to be destroyed because of their power. But maybe... She touched his hand, right next to the ring. Maybe we just needed the right bearer. The ring pulsed warmly at her touch, and this time neither of them pulled away. Something was building between them, a connection that had nothing to do with ancient artifacts or cosmic power. A warning light flashed on the console. They're still tracking us, Avelia said, but she didn't move her hand. All of them. They'll never stop. Then we'll face them together. Luke interlaced his fingers with hers. The ring's glow spread to encompass them both. Unless you still plan to destroy it? She looked at their joined hands, then up at him with a hint of her usual smirk. Let's call that Plan B. The ship's sensors detected multiple pursuit vessels emerging from hyperspace. The 3 factions had united in their chase, forming an armada that stretched across the starfield. They're going to force us down, Avelia said, scanning the tactical display. The nearest system has a habitable planet, but... Her voice trailed off. What? It's Arxia, the homeworld of the Alaris. She met his eyes, where the rings were forged. The ring flared with ancient power, recognizing its birthplace. Luke felt its energy surge through him, no longer whispering of power and destruction, but of healing and transformation, of love. Then that's where we make our stand, he said. Avelia's answering smile was fierce and beautiful. Together? The ring pulsed once, brightly, sealing their pact. Together. The Starweaver plunged toward the legendary planet, pursued by those who would destroy or misuse the ring's power. But within the ship, something new had been forged, a bond between the last Alaris and a simple human who had never wanted power, only to make broken things whole again. The final battle awaited them below, and the ring, sensing the love growing between its protectors, began to glow with a light that had not been seen in the galaxy for centuries. Arxia's twin suns painted the ruins in shades of gold and crimson. The Starweaver had landed in what was once a grand plaza, now surrounded by the crumbling remains of an ancient civilization. Massive crystalline spires, half buried in centuries of dust, still caught the light like frozen tears. Luke stood at the ship's ramp, the ring pulsing in time with the planet's strange magnetic fields. You grew up here. A lifetime ago. Avelia's voice was tight with emotion. Before the wars, before the rings corrupted everything, their pursuers were landing in a wide circle around them, corporation ships, whisperer vessels, and the gleaming white craft of the Lightkeepers. The ring's power thrummed through Luke's body, stronger here than ever before. The temple's that way. Avelia pointed toward a towering structure of black crystal and iridescent metal. If there's a way to end this, we'll find it there. And if there isn't, She touched his arm, sending a cascade of blue light through the ring. Then we make our last stand somewhere beautiful. They moved through the ruins, the ring's shield protecting them from the initial skirmishes. All around, the three factions fought each other as much as they pursued their true target. Energy weapons crossfired with mystical attacks while Lightkeepers attempted to purify everything in their path. "This is what destroyed us," Avelia said as they climbed the temple steps. "Everyone wanting power, no one wanting responsibility." The ring suddenly flared and Luke stumbled. Images flooded his mind, visions of what could be. He saw himself on a throne of light, Avelia at his side, the galaxy bowing before them. Their love made manifest through the ring's power, reshaping reality itself. "Luke!" Avelia's voice cut through the fantasy. "Stay with me." He blinked, finding himself on his knees. The ring was blazing now, its light rippling across the ancient stones. "The temple!" he gasped. "It's amplifying it. We need to keep moving." She helped him up, but more visions assaulted him with each step. "You could have everything," the ring seemed to whisper. "You could give her everything." They reached the temple's heart, a vast chamber where crystalline formations spiraled up into darkness. At its center stood a circular platform, covered in symbols that matched those on Luke's ring. "The forge," Avelia breathed, "where the rings were created." Before they could reach it, their pursuers caught up. The three faction leaders entered from different directions, weapons trained on the pair. The corporation director stepped forward, a tall figure in pristine white, his eyes replaced with cybernetic implants. "Mr. Harrison, Miss Avelia, let's discuss this reasonably." "Reasonably?" Avelia's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Like how you reasonably experimented on my people." "The past is irrelevant," the director said. "What matters is the future, the ring's power, properly harnessed." "We'll bring the great unmaking," interrupted the Whisperer leader, her multi-layered voice echoing through the chamber. Her dark robe seemed to absorb the ring's light, as was prophesied. The Lightkeeper Grandmaster raised his staff. "The ring must be destroyed, along with all who have been tainted by its power." Luke felt the ring responding to their threats, its energy building to unprecedented levels. The symbols on the forge platform began to glow in response. "Stop!" he shouted as the factions raised their weapons. "You're activating something." The chamber exploded with light. When it cleared, Luke found himself somewhere else entirely, or perhaps somewhere else when. He stood in a vast throne room, looking out over a transformed galaxy. Planets aligned in perfect harmony, their populations living in engineered peace. At his side was Avelia, more beautiful than ever, her blue skin shimmering with shared power. "This could be real," a voice said, his own voice, but older, harder. An alternate version of himself stepped from the shadows wearing robes of shifting light. "You've seen how they use their power, the corporations, the zealots, the fanatics. We could do better." "At what cost?" Luke asked, though he could already see it. The billions who had died resisting their perfect order, the free will stripped from those who remained. A small price for paradise. His other self gestured and the vision shifted to show him and Avelia ruling for centuries, their love made eternal by the ring's power. She'd never leave you, never die. You could keep her safe forever. The ring burned on his finger, urging him to accept this future. It would be so easy. A new voice cut through the vision. "Luke!" Avelia, the real Avelia, was fighting to reach him through the ring's power. "Whatever it's showing you, it's a lie." "Is it?" his other self asked. "Or is it the truth you're afraid to face? The power to protect everything you love?" Luke looked at the ring, really looked at it. In its facets he saw every choice that had led him here. His mother's sacrifice, the simple joy of fixing broken things. Avelia's smile when he'd used the ring's power to protect rather than destroy. "You're wrong," he said to his alternate self. "Real love isn't about control. It's about choice." The vision shattered. Luke found himself back in the temple chamber. But everything had changed. The ring's power coursed through the ancient structure, creating a swirling vortex of energy above the forge. All three faction leaders lay unconscious, their followers frozen in place by the ring's influence. Avelia stood before him, her golden eyes wide. "Luke, are you—" "I'm me," he said. "The real me." The ring pulsed, and suddenly he understood what needed to be done. He stepped onto the forge platform, feeling its ancient mechanisms respond to his presence. "The rings weren't meant for control," he said, pieces falling into place. "They were meant to connect, to heal, but fear twisted their purpose." "Luke, what are you doing?" Avelia moved to join him but was held back by an invisible force. "What the ring's been trying to show me all along." He raised his hand and the vortex of energy descended, surrounding him in a cocoon of light. "It doesn't want to be a weapon. It wants to be what it was always meant to be." The pain was extraordinary as the ring's full power flooded through him. He saw everything now. The ring's true origin, their intended purpose. Not tools of domination, but bridges between hearts and worlds. "You'll die," Avelia shouted, fighting against the barrier. "No human can channel that much power." Luke smiled through the agony. "Good thing I'm not trying to channel it. I'm letting it go." He closed his eyes and opened his heart, thinking of every broken thing he'd ever wanted to fix. His mother's illness, Avelia's loneliness, the divisions that had torn her people apart. The ring blazed with impossible brightness. "I love you," he said, not knowing if she could hear him through the maelstrom. "Not because of power or destiny, just because you're you." The ring shattered, but instead of destruction, there was transformation. The energy reshaped itself, flowing out through the temple in waves of healing light. Where it touched the ruins, ancient damage began to repair itself. The faction leaders and their followers awakened, their minds cleared of the ring's corrupting influence. Luke collapsed as the light faded. The last thing he saw was Avelia breaking through the barrier to catch him. "You impossible, wonderful idiot," she whispered, cradling him close. "What did you do?" He looked at his hand. Where the ring had been, a pattern of light remained etched into his skin, softly glowing. An identical mark had appeared on Avelia's palm. "Gave it what it really wanted," he said weakly. "A home, a heart, a choice." The temple had transformed around them. The crumbling ruins were now restored to their original glory, crystal spires singing with harmonious energy. The faction leaders approached, but something had changed in their eyes. The desperate hunger for power replaced by understanding. "The legends were wrong," the Whisperer leader said, her multiple voices now in perfect harmony. "The great unmaking was never meant to be destruction, but reconstruction," the Lightkeeper Grandmaster finished, lowering his staff. "A remaking of what was broken." The corporation director removed his cybernetic lenses, revealing newly healed human eyes. "We have much to atone for." Luke stood shakily, supported by Avelia. The marks on their hands pulsed in sync, creating a gentle web of light between them. "The ring didn't die," he explained. "It evolved, became what it was always meant to be, a bridge, not a barrier." He looked at Avelia. "Like love." "You know," she said, a familiar smirk playing at her lips despite the tears in her golden eyes. "For someone who fixes music boxes, you're surprisingly profound." The temple's energy continued to spread across Arxia, healing millennia of damage. The three factions' ships powered down as their leaders began discussions of peace. "What happens now?" Luke asked. watching the twin suns set through the restored crystal walls. Avelia took his hand, their marks creating a small aurora between their palms. That depends. Most of my life was spent hunting the ring, thinking it had to be destroyed. She smiled. I suppose I need a new purpose. Well, Luke said, I hear the galaxy's full of broken things that need fixing. Are you proposing a partnership, Mr. Harrison? He pulled her close, their marks blazing brighter. I'm proposing a lot more than that, Miss Avelia. Her kiss was like starlight. Months later, a small blue cat sat in the window of a restored shop on a distant space station. Inside, a human and an Alaris worked together, fixing broken treasures from across the galaxy. Their hands, marked with gentle light, moved in perfect synchronization as they restored beauty to damaged things. And if sometimes those repairs seemed miraculous, if broken things became somehow better than new, well, that was just the power of love. Or perhaps it was something else, something ancient and wonderful, transformed by the choice of a simple man who had never wanted power, only to heal what was broken, including the heart of the last Alaris, the end. Dear listener, isn't it funny how the most powerful things in life often come disguised as the simplest choices? While writing this story about ancient artifacts and cosmic battles, I found myself thinking about how we all carry our own versions of the ring. Not magical jewelry, mind you, though that would be convenient for paying bills, but the power to shape reality through our choices. Luke's story isn't just about saving the galaxy or finding love among the stars. It's about the quiet strength it takes to remain true to yourself when the universe is screaming at you to be something else. Sometimes the most heroic thing isn't wielding great power. It's choosing not to. Sometimes it's just fixing a broken music box because it matters to someone. You see, we all want to heal something, a relationship, a dream, a world that seems increasingly fractured. And like Luke, we often think we need cosmic power to make a difference. But perhaps the real magic lies in the simple acts of repair we perform every day. A kind word, a moment of understanding, the choice to see beauty in what others consider broken. And yes, I did manage to sneak a cat into a space opera. Because even in a story about galaxy-spanning adventures and ancient artifacts, sometimes you just need a furry friend to remind you that the universe isn't nearly as complicated as we make it out to be. In the end, this is a story about how love, not the flashy, dramatic kind, but the quiet, steady sort that shows up every day to do the work, might be the most powerful force in any galaxy. That, and the ability to make a decent cup of coffee while watching alien ships chase you across the cosmos. Thank you for joining Luke and Avelia on their journey. Remember, you don't need a magic ring to change the world, but having a blue cat probably helps. With cosmic appreciation. The author. P.S. If you happen to find any ancient artifacts that start glowing, maybe don't put them on right away. At least check the warranty first.